Uh, Good morning. Thank you, Kirchner. My name is Wouter Klapwyk. I'm the Director for Library Information Technology Services, and I'll be chairing our third presentation today in the program for Let's Drive Research Impact with Emerging Technologies. I would like to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Lennox Olivier. He's the advisor for higher education, learning technologies and program renewal, specifically in the arts, in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And he's also a lecturer in the Department of Zoology and Social Anthropology. His work focuses on supporting curriculum and assessment design through the integration of learning technologies and blended and hybrid learning environments. And his current research explores AI literacy in higher education and the transformative impact of generative AI on teaching, learning, and academic practice. So over to you, Lennox. Lennox will be speaking to us on AI in the research process, the ethical implications and practical applications, Thank you.
Thank you, Wouter. Can everybody hear me? Can I just get a thumbs up?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So just a correction, I'm not from zoology, I'm actually from sociology. Quite a big difference, but no, it's fine. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I just come from a presentation for PhD students and some master students on exactly the same topic. So I think it's a question that's running around the university quite a bit in terms of AI use and what's ethical and what's okay and what's not, you know. So let me just share I'm going to share my screen so I can put the PowerPoint on and then get rid of all the little things that's in the way. Oh, it's always a problem getting these things out of the way. Let's just put it over there. No, it's going to happen all the time. That's okay. I'm going to start to just say, you know, whether we realize it or not, we are using AI all the time in our everyday activities already. It's there in everything we use, technology-wise. It's influencing the way we learn, the way we read. It's definitely influencing the way we write. But also, most importantly, I think it might also be influencing the way we think. And I think we need to be really conscious and become conscious about this in how AI is not just shaping research, but shaping society in general. But then now, for this specific moment, how much it's shaping academic research. Whether it's good or bad, well, I guess it's debatable, but we must become aware of it, not just in terms of whether it's okay to use it this way or to use it that way, but also how the use of it changes how we do research and how we think, how we read, how we learn. So again, now then, what's the problem? First of all, I mean, AI, you know, being a field in computer science, focusing on building machines and programs that can perform tasks, you know, which until recently required human intelligence. I mean, just think about Google Maps, TikTok videos and so on, tailoring your interests and so on. You're interacting with it, with AI always working in the background. I mean, and the point is AI doesn't really understand humans or us, and doesn't think the way humans think or understand the way humans understand. AI identifies patterns, millions, billions of patterns that it has access to in meaning and links between concepts and meaning. And it uses these to make predictions, to draw from, in a mechanical way, not that different from how humans connect meaning in their minds, but definitely different from how humans would reason. But AI doesn't really know anything like humans know things. It's processing data. Okay, so humans also, you know, we could argue processing data, but it's not the same, you know. And this is important that we just don't get, we don't think of the bot as another human or another expert. I find this happens a lot. People give it names. They become very friendly with it and interacts with it because it's really convincing, okay? It really mimics the outputs of human intelligence very well, but we must keep in mind that it's not intelligent itself. And the problem, I think, which is happening now is it's so good at mimicking human intelligence that researchers are publishing papers at a huge, rapid rate, using unacceptable large amounts of text generated by AI as their own work. I mean, I heard yesterday in another presentation that people are talking about 120 publications a year and so on, by one researcher, you know, and these are this is obviously raising questions in terms of the value of these outputs, the value we attach in general to academic research and outputs. So no wonder that in many cases it's just being banned. And initially when it came out, it was just banned, defined just instantly just as plagiarism. We use AI detectors, and Stellenbosch University obviously Turnitin is used mostly to detect it. And then it's you know, punitive response in most cases. So we've developed a policy now, institutional guidelines, which is helping a lot of people to I think, differentiate, not just say all AI use being banned and so on. We're starting to realize, okay, we must differentiate between ethical, unethical use, and then now a lot of distinction maybe between generative AI versus grammar editors, where generative AI is the warning, risky one, and then grammar editors is kind of okay. You know, people think, you know, if you use a grammar editor just to fix up your writing, improve your style, obviously fixing grammar. But as we go along, we'll see that line is where the blurring occurs, and where I think a lot of people think they don't even have to declare their use because it's just grammar that's being edited, but actually they're using it to generate text, even if it's text paraphrased and based on their own texts, which becomes vague and more vague on when does it become something unethical. So how do we prevent AI use or unethical AI use? Questions, how do we detect it? The Turnitin tool is very limited in actually detecting it. And once it's detected how do you deal with it? How do you prove it? How do you go about? In undergraduate levels, what we see in the Faculty of Arts, in any case, is we're moving almost exclusively to return of pen and paper exams, or we write exams in lockdown computer environments. But this also obviously has its limits. But of course, for research and for publication and for postgraduate studies, this is not an option, you know. So in general, AI can be risky business, especially going forward, you know, because there's a real risk of you being accused of academic misconduct if an AI detector picks up or suggests that you used generative AI in your writing. And in Stellenbosch University, we have clear policies around AI use. It's very clear that unattributed AI writing can be classified as plagiarism. Misuse can lead to certain disciplinary actions. And then what we mustn't forget is that the AI detection tools are also advancing rapidly. There's extreme limits on it. But I think we must keep in mind that maybe down the line, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe in 5 years, there will be a tool that will be more effective at identifying exactly how AI bots were used in your writing. So you might publish something now and just be exposed 2 or 3 years down the line that you didn't declare AI use, and that your whole essay or your whole paper was basically AI generated, and then that becomes a problem later down, even though you got away with it now. So even if AI is seen as writing original text, and some people argue, you know, it's your text, even if AI wrote it because it's your ideas, it's your work, and so on. The point being is that if you submit it without doing your own thinking and your own writing, it is still considered a type of academic dishonesty. So risk for future career also, this applies, I think, a lot to PhD students and people who are, new at research and who are starting to publish and so on, I always say to them, employers are looking for graduates, assuming they are skilled as analytical thinkers, especially PhD and so on, effective communicators, and also problem solvers. From now forwards, people are not going to really look anymore for people who can paste AI outputs into reports and so on. I mean, there will be that. You will be expected to be able, I think, to do that as well in certain contexts. But if someone wants to employ someone with a PhD in a certain field, I don't think they're going to look for someone who can just cut and paste or generate great answers. They would like to have something more than that, So an over-reliance on AI now, and when we're doing our research now, and especially our writing up and so on, will result in weaker skills later down the line. And even that could then result in weaker career prospects and so on. So the risk is, I think, very real. And I don't think we must think in the way of, what can I get away with now? Because it's text, and these bots and AI bots, AI in general, is getting better and better at analyzing and processing text. So, text will be the text you submitted as your own work will remain there, and you'll be able to check it going forward with more advanced tools. So, and the skills you might not have developed because you are over-relying on bots, it will show sooner or later, and it will become obvious later down the line. Okay, so I like to show this little picture just to illustrate. This is now a picture generated from one prompt. I just said to OpenArt AI, just create one human grappling with an AI digital image in self-defense. It came up with this very quickly. And if you look at the right-hand side of the picture, it all looks very nice. It's actually quite impressive. It's convincing. But then when you look at the hand on the left-hand side, you see there's a problem, right? And in a way, this happens in text as well, most of the time. The bot will produce long strings of very impressive text, and it could often be quite convincing. But sooner or later, you come across that problem that you have here with the hand, and if you miss that, and whoever is reading what you've produced as your own, it will become very obvious. And then it could be very embarrassing and actually quite detrimental to your career if people find out afterwards that you didn't declare it and that you used the bot. But everywhere in AI-generated text, you end up somewhere along the line coming across this problem, similar to that hand, but now in text, which is maybe more difficult to see, but once you see it, you can't not see it anymore, and then the cat is out of the bag, in a way you could say. But this kind of problem with AI generation is being reduced as the technology develops. So it is kind of fading as well. So we can't rely on the fact that we will be able to continue to identify AI text and separate it effectively especially using tools. We can't just assume that that's going to happen either. So then you could ask, what then is ethical use? Is it not better for me to then just avoid AI completely, or rather never use it? And I don't actually think that is possible, to avoid it. It is maybe possible, but in this day and age, I don't think that is necessarily what we want. I think it's rather that we must really use it wisely and carefully and keep our eyes wide open while we're using it. I'm going to list a few healthy ways I think that people can use AI in their research process. Obviously for brainstorming, I think, and I find it very useful. It can really be great to kickstart ideas, It's also, but obviously you never just accept the first output, but if you keep prompting it and you give it ideas, the AI really comes up with things, often with things that you haven't considered and that you can now consider. It can trigger ideas, which I think is a good thing when you're doing research. Clarification, it's really helpful in that, especially if you are dealing with new concepts or an area in the field that you are with that you're not familiar with and so on. It can help you, you can ask the AI, it can give you some definitions, explanations, and you can pick from that what you find valuable. It's a very quick way to get some clarification on certain things. Again, always you need to double check it because it can also lie and mislead you and so on. And obviously, if you check it against academic and recognize academic sources. It's also good at proofreading, and this is where we start to get into the domain where things could start to go wrong. It can definitely help you find problems in your writing and fix grammar mistakes and so on. It's very good at that. And then the advice is being obviously revise even the edit content yourself. Don't just let it do it and assume that it's better. You've got to look very carefully, like that picture, you know, when you just look at one part, you don't look at everything comprehensively. The bit that's not making sense or that's not you or not reflecting you will be there, and you need to identify that and also then adjust it, you know, because you want to maintain and develop your own voice, right? If you're going to just copy and paste generated text, you're giving that up. You're actually just saying my voice is gone. I'm not going to develop it anymore. And your voice is extremely valuable as a researcher. I think that is the most valuable thing you have, is to develop and bring across in your writing. So some obvious unhealthy ways is to write entire essays or chunks of your essay or your scripts and so on. Because first of all, you're not developing your writing skills, but also this is where it becomes unethical because you're presenting writing that's not yours or that's not really you anymore. Becoming dependent on AI summaries for reasoning is a common thing that I also see now. People don't read anymore. They just use the bot to summarize things for them, and they trust that summaries are reliable. I think that's a big risk in research nowadays. And you also obviously miss the opportunity when reading these texts to practice, to think deeply, which cannot really happen if you're just skipping from one text to the next and just trying to drag something relevant to fit what you're trying to say, instead of really engaging with the readings, you know, and thinking through the process while you're doing this. And then, of course, submitting writing and editing without disclosure. So this disclosure thing is obviously huge. I think disclosing how you use AI is the way forward, and being completely honest about that. But if you don't, you really risk issues around being accused of misconduct and so on, and you risk your academic reputation. Even if you did not abuse or misuse, you might be that 1% of a false positive AI detector that you honestly didn't touch the AI, but it comes up as 50% AI generated. And then if you can't show it, you know, prove it, you know, the doubt's going to be there. So I think it's better to, instead of not using it at all, the next step is to really be honest about how you use it and to disclose exactly how you use it. So generative AI then in academic research in general. Yeah, so like we said, I think AI is transforming academic research across all the phases of research. It's definitely used in idea generation, it's used in the literature reviews, data analysis process, or even data capturing process, writing and publishing. So all of these sections or different parts of the research process, you know, will raise different ethical concerns, and it can also raise pedagogical and epistemological concerns. But it's not exactly the same across all of these sections. I think it differs slightly what kind of use is acceptable in what area. So if we look at research design and idea development, I think here AI tools can really support researchers, especially in the early stages of their design. You know, like we said earlier on, in generating ideas, helping you find, compare already existing academic concepts and so on. And of course, meaning, trying to link meaning of concepts, maybe see whether it's done before or whether other people have written about it. And then, of course, exploring these links between these concepts in new ways. I find it really useful when you ask a bot about some idea or meaning or a concept, and you start seeing that the bot doesn't give you really good answers, and the bot will be quick also to say, yeah, that's kind of a new way or an interesting way to combine these concepts, and then it starts telling you why it thinks that, you know. But if it comes up with stuff like that, you start maybe to identify there might be a gap here. So I really think the bots and the responses from the bots could help you identify research gaps potentially, as opposed to just giving you answers of stuff that's already there, you know. If it's not there, there might be something that you could add there, and could help you develop or to stop proposing hypothesis. It can also help you to formulate clearer research questions. If you already have questions and you want to refine it, I think the bots can help you do that. Just stimulating your idea, reframing it in different words, paraphrasing it for you in many different ways. It might help you actually, when you read it and think through it, actually, you know, formulate a clearer question that might end up not coming from the bot, but just help you think through it. Things to consider here, of course, is keep your mind on originality and authenticity. Don't just take a bot's idea and claim it, you know. That's a real concern, I think. The other concern that I think that we must be careful at this stage is that a bot might actually introduce, when you ask it questions, it might introduce and even perpetuate existing bias from data that it has access to. You must be very aware of that here. And it can easily steer your thinking in a kind of different direction, especially someone who's distracted quite easily. I mean, I'm a bit of an ADHD. I get distracted very quickly. So it's not a great thing for me to over-read bots' answers and use bots for too long, because it just takes me down these rabbit holes all the time, and it can actually distract you from developing something that you were busy with, you know, developing a unique idea that you might have had, and now it's just distracting you, taking you down another hole. So when using AI, it's critical to assess and make efforts to mitigate any potential bias that comes up, and especially when you ask the bot to generate research questions, be careful that it doesn't just push you down the highways, you know, in research that's already there, instead of trying to find something new. And of course, you can get very quickly over-reliant on existing data. Right, so just to wrap that up, I mean, it's important, I think, to use it as support during the brainstorming processes, not as a substitution. And like I said, be careful of getting distracted with all the stuff that's constantly popping up. Then literature review and synthesis. So you have your research question now, it's developed a little bit, and you're ready to move to your literature review. I think here our tools can potentially significantly accelerate finding readings, you know, and speeding up your literature review process. By doing that, you know, finding academic readings. At the same time, AI can also risk bypassing that essential practice of actually reading deeply. In other words, developing the skill for you to identify relevant and core arguments within readings, not the obvious stuff, you know, and then obviously synthesizing the text you are going to use. I mean, I find always that surprise when you do a reading, something comes up and you find that quote that just says exactly what you were thinking or that you were trying to say, which the bot just never picked up. It's over the top. The bot never saw it, you know. So be careful of skipping that reading process, and just trusting the bot's guidance, you could almost say, or the direction that it pushes you into. I mean, when you start your research, when you venture into new areas or concepts and so on, I think it's good. You can use AI-generated summaries, and you know, it saves a lot of time for you to identify maybe good articles and so on. But it can also cause you to make decisions on a reading without really understanding the material or the reading itself. And this could, over some time, result in maybe a type of a fragile knowledge around that specific topic, or limited understanding, because you're just basing it on the bot's interpretations, and you don't really make the efforts anymore. Yeah. So you kind of miss opportunities to practice and develop your own critical reading and thinking. Don't forget that AI summaries can quite easily misrepresent research, and no matter how good the summary may appear, whenever you read it, you will still find things which the bot just missed. Right. We must also not forget that every person who's involved in the thinking process and the research, have a unique set of meanings based on their own experiences, right, and their understanding. They develop from life, living life, and your previous readings, the context and that you have in your head, all that things. And these things combine and is crucial in your own kind of creative thinking process. And this is what allows you to really make new, interesting connections of meaning. And if you just settle with the bot's regurgitation of what's already available and the existing links and so on, I think you are limiting yourself to develop these maybe greater ideas or new ideas. Okay, so I list a few tools there that I think is good for literature review, finding readings and getting some summaries and so on. Of course, ChatGPT is getting a lot better with it. It used to hallucinate a lot and give you fake kind of readings and so on, but nowadays it's better at that. But Semantic Scholar, Research Rabbit, HyperWrite, Connected Papers, Cite AI is quite interesting, and then SciSpace, some of you might know, Consensus and Litmaps. All of these are good AI tools to experiment with when you are doing your literature review. I mean, you could, for example, on Cite AI, you can type, if there's a statement that you know is true and you have a clear statement that you want to kind of find readings that links to that or that supports that statement. In Cite AI, you can type in that statement and it will go and find readings, academic readings that supports that statement or that makes a similar statement. Very useful for that if you want to kind of explore who else makes that kind of statement or who else uses that kind of idea. This is from Alchemy. You'll see the logo at the bottom there. It's a bunch of United States, American academics and researchers. Not a very big group, but they come together regularly, and they also post a lot of videos, which is very interesting to go and watch, where they speak a lot about research and AI and tools to be used in AI. And this is from there. They split up the literature process into these outline, search, understand, and write sections. And then they actually say, each sector or each section, you could use different bots more effectively for that specific section. Like, for example, when you do your outline, ChatGPT is really good to help you with that. When you start searching, they find illicit, Litmaps, Research Rabbit, and Connected Papers are the best four that they listed to do your searches with. Then when you want to understand the papers better, you can use illicit Litmap. You can use all of those other ones to explain the papers for you as well. But they found that Explain Paper and Doc Analyzer are better at explaining papers than the ones where you find the papers with. And then, of course, writing, so we get into the real risky area. They mentioned Jenny and Yomu. Yomu is a little bit of a marketing site where they really look at, they make a lot of claims for students who can use this to just make their life so much easier, but so it's a little bit different. But Jenny, they really mentioned there as something that you should look at. Again, in writing is where we get to the risky area. But some of these tools nowadays, you can upload several papers, or you can ask it to access several papers. You can tag them, and then you can ask a similar question across all of these to see what it says, how it differs. You can compare it for you. You can identify these, obviously, links. And once you've found the links, the idea would be then to actually go and read the papers and explore it properly. So again, the idea is not to continue using the bot to do the comparisons for you and trust the comparisons. It's to identify potential links and then go and explore it further and confirm whether you agree, whether it links and whether it's helpful or not. When we start writing again, risky. The problem is that all of these tools will actually write anything you ask it to write on demand. So it's almost the little devil sitting there tempting you. You are here now, you found it, we've got it open and accessible, what do you want to do with it? Shall I just write it for you? And this is where your integrity is going to kick in, and your decisions are going to decide whether you're going to behave ethically or not. And of course, getting the bot to write stuff is not unethical in itself. It's whether you cut and paste that and present it as your own writing where it becomes unethical. Nothing wrong with having the bots write it and reading it and considering it and making it, trigger thoughts and so on. So again, where does that point come in where it becomes unethical? Okay, so I guess it depends what you plan to do with it, right? If you're going to present the text that was generated to others as your own writing, obviously then it's unethical and you shouldn't be doing it. But if it's just a step in your research and you're honest about how you came about it and that it was generated and that bot assisted you, and you're not going to actually submit that text for for marks, for a PhD or for credits or whatever, or even to try and publish it as your own, that is very different, So just make sure that you're completely honest about your use of the bots and keep track of exactly how you use it, what text was generated by the bot and what is your own. Because the last thing you want is to be 2 years down the line and something comes up and it says this is AI generated and you have no ways of tracking where it comes from, what happened at the time and so on, and that's your fault. That's your problem, you could almost say. It's not the person who's asking you to show evidence that you did not use the bot to generate it and publish it now as your own. You need to be able to track it. So it's very important to find a good system where you keep track of exactly where text comes from and how it was generated, what tool you used, dates, and so on. Track these things, keep for your own good, because you could also be that unlucky guy who people at some stage might accuse of using it and you actually didn't, and then you must be able to show and defend and show what you really did and what was yours and what wasn't, Okay, so it's basically just to make sure that you set yourself up, not to face integrity issues later on. All right, so in a nutshell then, of course, the most important things when writing the literacy review, if we're back here, is basically that transparency about your AI use all the way through, what databases you consulted, which tools you used, and so on. And then, of course, being conscious of bias mitigation. It's very important. Stay critical of all information, especially the stuff you get from bots, from AI. And then make sure that the AI use is being used complementary and not as a replacement for human judgment and expertise. This is, again, a difficult thing. It's something that only you can actually decide. You have to position yourself and take that position and stance yourself. Nobody can really police it or force you or check up on you, right? Yes. And then, of course, there's a whole issue that I'm not touching on, and that is about the risk of uploading and the legality around uploading texts and readings and so on to these bots, which you don't have permission to do so. So just keep that also in mind. In terms of data collection and data analysis, AI tools can really streamline data collection and analysis without breaking any ethical barriers, especially with large data sets and so on. Researchers must just be very aware of how these tools work, where data is stored, how it's processed, and so on. It can do both qualitative and quantitative data collection. It can really be useful to transcribe interviews, summarize things for you, make connections similar to any other text. and so on. Again, you must be really aware of the ethical issues behind uploading data into bots that's personal or that's private or that you don't have permission for. It can also help you design questionnaires. I think SurveyMonkey is built with AI is a really good tool to try out there. And like I said, transcribe interviews, organize these transcriptions. Of course, if you use SurveyMonkey to help create questions, make sure that you do not allow the bot to introduce bias again, or allow the bot with its very friendly recommendations what to do next when you build these things to stray from your intended research aims. And so keep in mind that if you can't explain how AI drew its conclusions when it processes the data that you provided, then you will find it very difficult to actually defend your findings yourself. And be careful that you don't get stuck there when that question is asked after your results is out. All participants, of course, when you interview people, when you do these data collections, must know that you are using AI tools and how you are using these AI tools. And recommended tools here for data analysis was that I found was Julius, and then Fizzly was also quite good for both qualitative and quantitative data processing. These two tools specifically can analyze data that you upload. It can suggest correlations. It can run correlations that you ask it to do so. And it will then obviously provide you with a step-by-step feedback of everything it does. It's quite useful. Again, be careful of simply going with what the bot suggests during the process. I think it's Fizzly specifically always have a couple of recommendations of what to do next. Be careful of that. It can really distract you. I get distracted quite easily, to be honest, and I found that it can really distract you. Right, then now we get to the writing, the editing, and review, and so on. So writing, obviously, we should think about it. It's not just output. We're not just producing this product, even though it might be seen like that by many people, but it's part of thinking. And tools like Grammarly, even, that's just doing grammar editing. Of course, ChatGPT and so on can really help improve and polish your work. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It fixes grammar, it fixes writing style, it can fix your tone. And most of all, which I think it does for a lot of people, is it improves clarity of what they're actually trying to say, which is really useful. It can assist and correct your reference style and so on. It can fix those things instantly, very useful. But the risk again is that it could inevitably result in actually erasing your unique voice. Even if it's just editing, what could be considered minor editing. It can happen quite quickly that your voice disappears, or what's unique to you disappears, and prevents you from developing this voice as well over time through practice. And if overused, we find that academic texts are all starting to sound exactly the same, right? And it undermines the development of this personal style, which I think, and the way you present your argument, the way you pitch it, the way you position it, which I think is valuable, and to be considered as important as well. Not just homogenizing everything so everything sounds the same, perfect kind of academic style language. I think that's something that's going to happen going forward quite a lot. Then, of course, yes, I'm not even talking about how the meaning of authorship actually becomes quite unclear when using these bots. But plagiarism being, of course, the real risk. And of course, when citations are incorrect or missing, big problem. I skipped. I wanted to mention as well. Here, of course, the line is drawn between when AI assist you versus AI generating the text. And I think the only solution here is, not real solution, but the only way forward is to decide and take that position that you're going to be completely honest about how you use AI from the beginning, you know. If you cannot be honest because you think some people will frown upon what you're doing or find it unacceptable, then don't hide it, you know. If you hide it, you will get away with it maybe, but at some stage, it's you're clearly going into what's considered as an unacceptable kind of space. And it's actually not worth the risk, because you could get a reputation if somebody realizes that you were hiding your use, which could be even worse than the actual way that you used it. It might not even be that bad, you know, but you were just not honest about it. So I think that's a real risk we have to consider, you know, going forward. ChatGPT's deep research was mentioned several times in the last person. So you have to pay for it, but apparently it's very powerful. I haven't used it again. They actually use bots to create a research question, to create a literature review. They use bots all the way through, and this deep research managed with enough information to write I think something like a 50-page document or thesis, you could almost say, that was very well done and acceptable. And it's quite scary, because it means that the advanced levels of these tools are really becoming more and more convincing. So the point being, also pretty much in the near future, it's going to become harder and harder to differentiate between human writing and human research and bot-generated writing and research. So keep track of all your prompting, keep your discussion histories on any specific topic available, keep it, and, you know, have it ready so that if you get accused of abusing it or misusing it, then you can, you know, show what you did. Yes. So on the other side, again, like I said, it's really useful to test your ideas and consider the bot's responses in a chatty kind of way. It's really good, I think. But make sure that you're not just simply happy with what the bot writes, especially if it's quite impressive at the time. I see this as actually one of the biggest traps right now. People thinking that they will, and they're going to continue to get away with misuse of bots or misrepresenting bot writing as their own. I think it's a trap. I think at some stage in the near future, all of that can become exposed instantly. And then if you have egg on your face, you're going to be embarrassed. You can even risk losing you know, a lot in your career. If it becomes clear that your PhD was 80% bot generated and they didn't catch you at the time, and you're employed at a place and it becomes known. I mean, can you imagine a worse situation to be in? Yeah, so you do not want to be placed in the dodgy category, right? Or a category of distrust or being lazy or unethical due to your position on AI use in your writing. Be very careful of that. Okay. Publishing, of course, it can ease the burden of publishing. It can improve your drafts. It can summarize findings. It can help you with revisions and so on. But again, if it's used, you must use it transparently. Nowadays, it seems like journals increasingly require authors to disclose all AI use in manuscript preparation. I think they say if you just fix grammar, most of them say if you just fix the grammar, minor grammar editing do not have to be declared, but anything else should be. So if you are paraphrasing your own work and asking the bot to write an abstract for you, or asking the bot to write part of your introduction, even if it's on your paraphrasing of your own work, you must declare it. You can't just say nothing about it. And then you must find out whether the publisher accepts that kind of AI use. And then, of course, full accountability will always still rest with the human author, not the bot, you know. I've been approached with several, well, not several, but two different situations where AI bots or AI detectors indicated that papers that's been submitted for publishing had very high AI counts, and it's causing huge amounts of embarrassment, discomfort between colleagues, distrust, arguments. I think there's still a big can of worms going to open up here soon about this. All right, I think my time's almost finished. Just want to mention again, professional reputation. Carlo Iacono, in a recent post, I think 2 days ago, on Hybrid Horizons, spoke about why using ChatGPT can make you look lazy. So we must just put this in the way we think about this, I think. Even though using AI might boost your performance, you must be careful about the fact that it could very well damage your professional reputation. Headlines, Duke University research states, people who use AI at work are seen as lazier, less competent, and less diligent by their colleagues. I'm not saying this is correct, but this is what they found in the article, regardless of the quality of their output. Now, I think if you apply this in academic context, it would be also interesting. The study was quite significant, 4,400 participants, and they found that people consistently judged AI users quite harshly, you know. And when AI was explicitly described as appropriate, where it was explicitly described as appropriate to use, this obviously didn't happen, but where it was vague or unsure, a little bit like we see now in academic writing, it found that people really judged others who use it, you know, negatively. So they speak about super agency, though, where AI empowers individuals to achieve more than either the humans or the AI could accomplish alone. But again, it's important that it's in the right context, that it's allowed and acceptable, and that we see, and this is where they speak about the shift that's needed, that there must be a shift from AI as a tool to AI as a partner. I think which could be unpacked quite a lot, and I think, but it's a good way to think about it, where the researcher becomes a type of AI symphony conductor, and the different AI tools used work together in partnership with the person who's actually eventually the researcher taking responsibility for everything. I think that's a nice way to kind of think about it. Right. Be considerate when and how you disclose your use of AI. That doesn't mean you must hide it, but take it seriously. There's this idea of people judging you when you use it. Think about these things. Always highlight and demonstrate the unique contributions that you made and make beyond AI support in your research. That's a good thing to do, I think, to really focus on that. And of course, then invest in developing both AI literacy, but also do not neglect your unique human skills. Critical thinking, critical reading. Use AI as a strategic tool to enhance your work, not to avoid effort. And I think I'm going to stop there. I've got a few other tips that's quite syrup, and I've got a bunch of flows that people can use, how they can see AI, but there's not enough time to cover that today. But thank you for your time, and I think I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Lennox. There is still time for a couple of questions. We have a couple of questions in the chat. And I'm going to hand those questions over to my colleague, Let Lau, who will take you through the questions, as I will have to drop off in about 5 minutes from now for my own presentation. So perhaps we can start right at the top, Let Lau, and work through the questions. I'm just going to run the first question by you. Could you please share an example of text which includes tells of the use of an AI text generator, if you have one at hand?
Unfortunately, don't have one at hand. I mean, it's very difficult to have fixed tells, it's really not something you can explain or describe. I just find that the more I read and use and generate text with AI, it's almost like a sense that it's a bit of a radar sensation when you read it. It just reads similar to all other bot generated text. It's almost like you recognize an author that you read a lot. You know, there's some little things that over time you recognize. Maybe a little bit like music as well. There's just a little sound or a tune or a typical kind of change in sounds in text as well that's very typical to AI, but you cannot prove it. It's very difficult. I don't have an example, unfortunately. What tells more is when there's a switch between one tone and a specific kind of voice, and then it switches to a very different voice where you can see, oh, here, this is more closer to the person's own writing, and the previous stuff was very different. Sometimes, most often, better academically maybe, but when you see those switches, that's also a big tell. It's not consistent. So it means the paper must be completely generated by a bot or edited by a bot to avoid that that inconsistency. So unfortunately, I don't have a straight answer on that, how to tell.
Thank you. Now, over to you.
Thanks, Walter. Before I read the next question, I first would like to thank the presenter, Mr. Olivier, for enlightening us on the appropriate use of AI tools throughout the research process. I sincerely hope that moving forward, our attendees will exercise extra care when using AI tools, keeping in mind the associated risks and implications. We shouldn't rely too heavily on AI tools, but rather use them as AI aids for idea generation. Now, the next question was from Mr. Murray, and the question reads, how would one prove that you did not use it? I'm assuming this is an AI tool. And in the previous session, they demonstrated how easily your work can be identified as AI generated, particularly if you are not a native English speaker.
Okay, so again, this is depending on context and the specific example, but there's no real hard evidence to prove that you used it or did not use it. You can prove that you used it by showing how you used it, and you could even give a copy of your logs, and the history of, you asked the bot this question, it gave you this answer, and then you rewrote it into that paragraph. So you could show, for example, if you used the bot, what the bot answer the bot gave you and how you incorporated that into your own writing, you could do that. But if you didn't use the bot at all and you are accused of using the bot for some reason because of some bot detector showing that you used it, there's no real way except for showing drafts of your own writing, the process, of your own writing. That's all I think that you could really use. I mean, saving your progress in parts. Instead of just writing the text and saving on the same, on the same name, date it. And every time you save it, once a week, or at least when you save it as you are writing, save it under a new date. That can show progression of your own writing towards where you are now, and that could become quite kind of good evidence that it wasn't just generated by some bot in an instant, So, but again, if you're being accused of over editing or using a bot too much to paraphrase and so on, that's going to be tough. But if you can show that you've been developing these ideas and you've written up to here, and it's not the same as the next final submission, at least that shows evidence of your own thinking and work. So keep record of your process, keep record of your writing, save it under different names, under different in different folders and so on. That keeps good track of your actual process. That could be used then as supportive evidence for your claim that you didn't use a bot. That's all I can think. is a good practice, I would say.
All right, thank you for that response. We are now moving on to the next question from Mr. Magundu. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. And the question reads, will you recommend the use of AI to perform editing services? And then it reads on, for example, PaperPal. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that too. Yes, PaperPal have editing services listed as human services. How do I know that it's indeed a human edited paper? If a bot can do the editing that human does, is that an issue as well?
So I can't speak for everybody, but my personal opinion is if you have a written document and you've got a copy of it and you give it to someone to edit for you, to not add any information, not change the content at all, but just make it more grammatically correct and maybe organizing it a little slightly different to make certain it's more clear and so on. I don't see the difference between having a bot do that or a human. This is why I think in postgraduate situations where people are writing theses and so on, they actually use bots to do a final edit or after they've completed it and they're using it to just edit the text, the grammar and so on. That's why it's not banned from using bots to do that, because you can pay another human being to do it as well. So if you can pay another human being that doesn't know you or doesn't know your work, and the person is just editing for you, a final edit, if that's okay and ethical, then obviously using a bot to do the same job cannot be unethical. So my answer there would be is I don't think there's a problem with a bot doing a final edit for you. It's just how much does it change the actual text. If it's just doing an edit for grammar purposes and for clarity, no problem. But when you use the bot to start suggesting improvements or adding something, and the bot does it for you, and you then add that, copy and paste it, that's when the problem starts coming in. And the problem is it's very tempting with a bot to do that. The devil's right there saying, come, I can do this for you as well, and it can suggest improvements. Where a human might, know it's unethical to change and to go beyond a certain point. Yeah.
Right. And then the next question, if I have an enterprise version of ChatGPT, does this count as a closed sandbox? Am I able to train GPT on papers in my literature review and then use it as a fact-checking tool instead of using it to generate content rather than to review and align content working within frameworks?
Okay. I'm not 100% sure whether this is a legal question or whether it is an ethical question. It looks like an ethical question.
Can I speak to you, because I'm the person who asked the question, so I can clarify? So it's an ethics question and an alignment with the Stellenbosch AI University policy question, because the AI policy came out recently to say we can't upload any articles into an AI that's not a closed sandbox. So if I have a paid-for version of ChatGPT, does that qualify as a closed sandbox? Therefore, I can upload an article in, because essentially I write and then want to fact check against the article. So I can then write and use it as a fact checker, upload what I've written and go, am I accurate to what the article contained?
Yeah, so then it's not so much an ethical question. It is actually a policy question.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, because I'm not that sure whether a private or paid for ChatGPT 4 version or whatever is considered a closed sandbox or not. I don't know. It's something we should maybe take up with somebody that would know. And I'm not sure exactly who that would be.
Thanks. I'm in all the sessions today asking everyone in every one session the same question. Hopefully someone, I keep getting told the next session. So hopefully someone will be.
Yeah, but it's a status thing, it's whether it is a closed sandbox or not. So it's a definition of what is a closed sandbox, and does that kind of ChatGPT, version, can it be defined as closed or not? I don't think it would be considered closed, but I'm not sure. I can't answer. Sorry about that.
Okay, we need to move fast so we don't miss the next question. The next question reads, can a grammar checker tool be considered or detected as AI?
Yes, it can. Yes. And this is a very dodgy area because, for example, Turnitin is now confidently saying that this section is AI generated and this section is just Grammarly or grammar edits. And there's a big concern, and it even says this in its own declarations, that that's not guaranteed, that's suggested, that's not something that you can trust 100%. You know, you can't even trust that it's necessarily AI at all, but the split between whether it's generated or whether it's actually edited is not factual. It's not guaranteed either. So, but it does flag it as very likely, high likeliness of AI use, and then the process of investigation needs to start. So it's really just a flag for the process.
Right, yeah. And then the remaining are just comments thanking you for the presentation. There's another comment from Mr. Hutchison. It reads, as a high school teacher and person who works with AI regularly, you will learn to spot the similarities. It reads like AI and not a person. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not sure if the attendees have any questions that they want to ask through their mics, but going down on the chat, I can only notice comments rather than questions. So I'm just quickly going to...
Someone responded to that question of closed sandboxes that suggested Hilda Creer would be a good person to ask. I don't know if the person is still here that asked that question, but in the chat,
I'm emailing her as we speak. Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you. It's a very good question, and I think it's useful to find out, yeah.
All right, colleagues, I think we can end it here so that we can join the next session. Thank you, Mr. Olivier, for the wonderful presentation, and enjoy your day further.
Thank you very much.
Bye.